Welcome to the Customer Wins podcast, where business leaders discuss their secrets and techniques for helping their customers succeed and in turn grow their business.
Hi, I'm Rich Walker, the host of the Customer Wins, where I talk to business leaders about how they help their customers win and how their focus on customer experience leads to growth. Today is a special episode in my Perspective series, and today's guest is Peter LePiane, founder of IdeaBridge. Some of my past guests have included Amy Riley of The Courage of a Leader, Lauren Schreier-Merdinger of Contract to Close, Jerome Myers of Exodus, and Bobby Steiner of Bobby Steiner Golf Academy. And today's episode is brought to you by Quick, the leader in enterprise forms processing. When your business relies upon processing forms, don't waste your team's valuable time manually reviewing the forms. Instead, get Quick. Using our Form Extract API, simply submit your completed forms and get back clean, context-rich data that reduces manual reviews to only 1 out of 1,000 submissions. Visit quickforms.com to get started. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Dan Trometer, a prior guest and the only magician I've had on this show. Go check out his website at dantrometer.com if you're looking for a transformational speaker who can bring magic to your audience. All right, I'm really excited to talk to Peter LePiane, an accomplished management consultant with a track record of helping organizations transform how they validate and launch products and services. With a background in startups, incubators, venture capital, and professional coaching, Peter spent the last 2.5 decades refining his consulting toolbox, serving a diverse range of clients from mid-sized companies to large multinational corporations in industries including financial services, insurance, retail, telecommunications, consumer packaged goods, and fragrance manufacturing. Well, that's an interesting one. Peter, welcome to the Customer Wins.
Rich, thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you and get your perspective. For those who haven't heard this podcast before, I talk with business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, how they built and deliver a great customer experience, and the challenges to growing their own company. Peter, let's understand your business a little better. How does your company help people?
Yeah, what an interesting question. And I love the fact that it's people in general. So there are really, if I'm to group it, kind of 2 types of people, I suppose, that I help. So one is my direct client. And my direct client typically has a customer-facing problem. So that could be some kind of experience with a product that's in market. It could be something that they want to bring to market that is customer-facing. So that's a type of person that I help very directly. But I really think a lot of the time who I'm helping as a person is that end customer. So it might be the customer of a bank, for example, and helping them with a better experience with a credit card or some kind of other financial product. A fragrance manufacturer, for example. With that particular client, that was an internal customer, so to speak. But there, I guess, and talking about this out loud, there's a bunch of different types of people. But in general, it's usually that my direct kind of client and then their customer.
So I'm glad you articulate it this way, because this is actually a challenge of so many companies. I work with financial services firms who serve the advisor, who serve the investor. I work with fintechs who serve the advisor, who serve the investor. And this is true of so many different industries, right? So how do you decide who's the more important person to serve? How do you choose to figure out which problem to solve for, right? How do you go about that?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost by, I think, process. It's not like I spend a ton of time thinking about this. It's fairly automatic, I think, but I do think about it. Look, if there was let's use a credit card as an example. No, actually, I'm going to go to the fragrance manufacturer because you kind of raised your eyebrows with that one. So that initiative was a change management initiative, and it was their internal sales force that was adapting to the use of an AI tool as a co-pilot in how they worked. So at the end of the day, it was really they were changing. Now, changing theoretically for the benefit of their customer. So a customer who uses their fragrance, a well-chosen, selected fragrance for whatever the commercial application, hand sanitizer, soap, laundry detergent, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not like I spent a lot of time thinking about that, but I did think about the fact that, look, if there's no end customer at the end of the day, the consumer of the fragrance, then it doesn't really matter if I help them change to adapt this AI tool. They could stay, they could leave. I mean, yeah, sure, that's my client, that's who I'm serving, but they'd be irrelevant if they didn't have an end customer. So if I don't think about that end customer, even though that's really not directly, even close to directly my client in this situation, I have to think about them.
Well, but see, that's why this point is so important, because their business doesn't exist without their client. That the use case you're talking about doesn't exist without the end user going through the processes they're trying to create. So it's paramount that you do think about both sides of that experience in order to be successful with it. I was talking to my team yesterday. We were talking about our product, and my product manager, I love him. He said something to the effect of, well, I'll put this out on Slack and we can all vote on what the best thing is. And my response was, look, I love our opinion, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the end user's opinion that actually matters here. So I'm kind of curious, do you help your clients get to that feedback from their customers so that you can incorporate that into what you're doing?
100%. So my usual philosophy, methodology, the toolbox that I employ is something called Lean Startup. And that started in the Bay Area, in Stanford. Really, that was in and around Stanford, and really, it was all about discovering what the customer wants. So, a guy by the name of Steve Blank really started this way of thinking inside of Stanford. A guy by the name of Eric Ries wrote a book called The Lean Startup, and that's really where the whole thing, the whole thing went nuts.
Yeah.
So Steve Blank was Eric Ries's prof at Stanford, and that's how.
Got it. Okay.
Steve Blank wrote a book called 7 Steps to the Epiphany, something along those lines. It's all about startup and how you get to really customer insights and understanding a go-to-market strategy based on those customer insights. So, what I tend to help customers out with is getting to insights that direct strategy in as quick and cheap a way as possible. That is the goal of any lean startup practitioner, and certainly I'm no different.
Okay, so I want to ask you more difficult tactical challenges here. So I have a series of questions I might ask with this, but one of them is how valuable is your customer service person on your team's opinion or perspective of the customer feedback versus can you get to more direct feedback going to customers? This is one part of the question.
Yeah, I'm always going to want to get the answer from horse's mouth. So that means the customer. Sometimes that's impractical. So let's say that we're sitting in a customer journey mapping session. As much as I always invite my clients, so whether it's a bank or an insurance company or whoever, fragrance manufacturer, doesn't really matter, startup, doesn't matter, I invite them to invite the customer in. I've not had that. They haven't taken me up on that yet.
It's hard, right? This is part of the challenge.
It's vulnerable, right? Like you want to, I mean, you've got your own successful company, right? It's very natural to, as the founder, as the owner, to want to show your customers that you're the best. You have competition, more than likely.
Sure.
A bank certainly does. So it's a very vulnerable position to bring your customers in and expose to them, hey, look, I'm figuring this out. I'm figuring out this customer experience for you to get the best product. Which really, as I think about that, is obvious. Every customer knows that. They're aware of your competition. Of course, they know you're trying to figure out the best customer experience. I think most of them. And maybe that's just my bias. And now I've lost your initial question.
Well, and I'm going to tear on this a little bit because I think if your customer is your customer, they will want you to have a better product. I agree. It's hard to get them to participate, but they definitely have an incentive to help you. And many of them love to help, which actually leads to a different question. So you did answer my question. You think getting it straight from the customer is better than internal perception or opinion about it. And I agree, but it's hard to do. So my second question then is, let's say you have a loud customer. The one who's willing to give you all the feedback, and that's where all your focus goes because they're willing to give you the feedback. How much credit do you give them versus trying to balance it out and not be skewed to one specific framework or their filter?
There's great danger in sample size of one.
Yeah.
So I have a statistics background, and that has kind of stayed with me as much as I hated it in university. It's really stayed with me throughout my career, and trying to think probabilistically about any kind of business problem has served me well. So I think in that particular case, um, but it's also dangerous to take just the very happy customer as well.
Mhm.
So as much as possible, um, getting a nice cross section of your customers is ideal. Now, the next question might be, or I don't know if you have this question or not, but I think that the next logical question is, well, how many of them are we talking? Let's say my potential target market is the population of the United States. Well, that's 330 million people. That's a lot of people. Well, luckily, statistics will help you out in terms of what a representative, statistically significant sample size would be. Well, so if you're using the statistics there, that's 384 people. Well, come
Yeah.
on, you're not going to go and get 384 people so you can be, plus or minus 5% in your margin of error. Who cares?
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, well, then how many do I get if I don't just get one? So the research will say that 5 is the right number to when you're trying to find the biggest problems in a customer experience. If you're trying to really refine something and it's, say, a button placement and you're doing an A/B test, that's something where you're going to have to get a really statistically significant sample and then look at the
Yeah.
numbers. But if you're just trying to figure out, what, is this customer journey even good? Are there major problems in it? If you talk to 5 people, you will find the major problems. It's like
Yeah.
almost driving down your street and finding potholes. So if you ask 5 neighbors where's the biggest pothole on the street, they'll probably be able to tell you.
I think that's really good because it's manageable. 5 is an achievable number. And I will give you credit there because last year, in pre-launch of our new product that we released in January, we talked to 32 customers about the
Mhm.
product. And part of it was to see who would want it, but most of it was to validate the price and fit. Did we have it? What was interesting is probably out of the 32, probably 25% were of one specific style of company, not a fit. They did not want the product at all, which was eye-opening for us, but super important too. We're not going to waste our marketing efforts on that segment of the market.
Yep.
So it wasn't a huge number, but it was sufficient enough for us to get the message. No, I think that's really key. So, going back to the inner loop that we have as companies, some of us think we're innovators. We're Steve Jobs. We know what the customer wants better than what they want. So I'm kind of curious if you see that with your customers, and how do you balance the innovation, the futurism that people have in their mind of what could be out there versus what customers are telling you? Because customers don't see the future that well. Or do they?
Yes, very, very tricky. Look, anyone who is either risen up in an organization and is in a position to make these types of strategic product direction decisions, or who has birthed the company themselves, is going to be hard to convince, and they should be. I think, but yet there's danger in that. So I have always tried to rely on the data. I have. So what that means is, here's an experiment. So designing an experiment is much harder than it sounds.
Mhm.
Now we learned. It's funny. I have my son's scientific method book, like here. He's in grade 5. Here it is.
Nice.
And we forgot that. I show this all the time. That's why I kind of have it handy. We kind of forgot how the scientific method works. It's got a particular process. It's got very strict rules to it. So, in answering the question, if you've got someone who is a fan of the data, and you present them a number of experiments, all well designed, all solid hypotheses. The design of the experiment and the way that was processed was legitimate, sample sizes, all that good stuff. If that's what we need, if that's what we're trying to prove, then that person usually can be convinced or swayed, or at least, brought off of kind of a very, very strong opinion to look at another way with data. If you don't have that person, for me, you've got to first try and convince them that the data is the thing that should speak, and then go that direction. That's really, all I've ever been able to do is really, at the end of the day, it's the customer, just as you've said, it's the customer that matters. It doesn't matter what our opinion is. Who cares? It's sample size of one, my opinion. I'm irrelevant. Doesn't matter what I think. So, it's really, because I think, look, if you're so staunch kind of in your stance that data can't speak to you, and it's a slam dunk case, I think you're probably going to fail anyway. So
that's the truth, right? You're not willing to face facts. You're not willing to look at truth. So how are you going to survive that?
Yeah.
I love it when data can work for you. And sometimes that's really hard to get to. Yesterday, we were talking about a specific new design in our product where we were saying, how many of these items should we show by default? And the number was 5 that we showed. How do we know 5 is the right number? So we ran a query and we found out the average customer has less than 5 or less. By 70% of the customers have 5 or less. So that's a great design. And actually, the ones who had the most weren't going to use that feature. So it didn't matter. So I love it when data can help inform that. So let's switch gears. You mentioned you're helping this customer deploy an AI tool.
Yeah.
I wonder, from your perspective, how much does AI play a role in trying to figure this out with, feedback from customers, persona analysis, anything like that? How are you using AI with your customers?
Yeah. I mean, quite a bit. So, not just straight up content creation. That's pretty straightforward. I think that's, it's getting to be table stakes at this stage of the game. But I've done things like kind of prepped whatever ChatGPT or whatever your favorite large language model is, to basically say, hey, look, you're a customer in this segment, and then really start asking it questions. And it's not like I'm taking that as the data. I think that's dangerous. But what it's allowed me to do is really rethink some of the questions that I ask. And then I'll end up with a better customer interview script when I actually go out and talk to real customers.
Yeah.
So that's one use case for sure. Certainly doing my desk research when I've got to figure out segmentation and perhaps segment sizing, attributes of segments, that stuff I'll do, either just with straight up Google searches, but more often than not, doing, some kind of query to ChatGPT. I remember the search engine that I'm using, and it ends in a Perplexity. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Perplexity. Yeah, I've heard of Perplexity. I haven't used it yet.
Yeah,
I'm going
it's
to
cool.
get into that.
Yeah, it's definitely cool because you can ask more questions. It's not just like, hey, here, this is what I want to know, and here's a bunch of results, and then you go kind of pecking through them. You can ask a second question, get some refinement. It tells you where its sources are. So it's actually a really useful thing to do, I find, for desk research. So things like target markets and sizing and things of that nature. Those are really the two major ones that come to mind.
I've had an idea of what to use, how to use AI in our own marketing and sales aspects. And I'm going to ask a question with this kind of filter in my head. Are you seeing clients, or are you in particular feeding the AI persona analysis, market studies, research, anything that you've already collected and know about your industry, market, customer, et cetera, and then using that to go further?
Yeah, I mean, I think in essence, it's so a lot of what I'm doing is customer discovery. So in essence, I am doing a little bit of that. So I'm kind of feeding it. Here's what I know. So therefore, here's what you are. And now I'm going to ask you these questions. So I kind of left that part out of it. So here, I want you to be like this, and here's what I know about this thing, whatever it is, segment, persona, what have you. Now answer me these questions. So that's, yes, definitely.
Yeah. I feel like we should all have an AI that knows our business, our industry, our audience super well. So it becomes this partner of ours, and we can go to it with different needs. Like, okay, help me write SEO optimized content, or help me understand maybe what's possible in this industry, or needs, et cetera. And I'll tell you something else. If you have a really broad audience or something that's really well known, the AI is amazing for that. A year ago, my wife wanted to start a weight loss clinic. And so we said, give us personas of women between 30 and 55 years old who have these types of problems. Oh my gosh. I mean, it came up 20 different personas for us. We chose the 5 that made sense.
Yeah.
And we were at profitability in 4 months because the advertising was aligned with those personas that just came straight out of ChatGPT, with us feeding it very little, in fact.
Yeah.
But I presume a lot of your customers are bigger enterprises, business to business, and it's a harder thing to figure out.
I mean, it can be. I think it's all got to get validated at the end of the day, which I'm sure you did too. I mean, you would
Yeah.
have known if your marketing was a little bit off in this one segment, you would have adjusted.
Oh yeah, we
So I
did.
think no different. No different whether it's B2B or B2C.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to have to wrap up soon. Is there anything I've left out that you think we should get across today in what you do and how you help customers, and something I didn't uncover?
Um, Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on really the two main ways that I tend to help my clients, and one is product, in the product realm, and really helping them either adjust a product that's already in market to be more successful, or um, take ideas and bring those to market, and then really, if they need to, come up with ideas in the first place. So that's kind of the product realm. And then there's the change management realm, which is all around, really is the same thing when it comes to toolbox. So when I go and
Yeah.
apply the tools, change management to me is just an adoption of something. A product is an adoption of something. It's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can whip people and say you're going to work in this way, but they usually find a way to not work in that way, but make it seem like they're working in that way. So in essence, it's adoption. So I treat it the exact same way. I think of change as a product, and under the hood, I'm using the exact same techniques. It's basically lean startup. There's something called lean change management. There's a guy out of Toronto who wrote a book called Lean Change Management. It's got very much lean startup under the hood. And that's kind of the method that I apply with my own flavor to it, with a bunch of product stuff built in. So,
Well, and I think fundamentally what you're getting at is, if you want people to adopt, buy a new product, it has to have a great underlying experience for them, because everybody always asks, what's in it for me? I mean, I've done change management. I've worked at a company, and people were crying, think they're going to lose their job because they didn't understand what was in it for them to change to the new system we were giving them. And so fundamentally, you are designing and building out better experiences for your customer so that they can get that adoption, right?
100%. Doesn't matter whether it's a new way of working or a new product that's sitting on the shelf, virtual or not. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Look, I do have one more question that I want to ask you, but before I do that, what is the best way for people to find and connect with you?
I'd say the way to guarantee get me is through LinkedIn. So I don't know if we can kind of put my LinkedIn profile out
Yeah,
there,
it'll be
or if
linked to
my
the episode.
name's
Sure.
okay, great. Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to do it, is just message me on LinkedIn. You can kind of see more about what I do, some of the stuff that I'm posting, even though I'm very lousy at posting consistently. And you can see my past posts at least. And then you can take a look at my background, of course. So that's probably the best way to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, your name is unique, so you're not hard to find.
No, no.
That's
If
great.
there's anyone else on LinkedIn with my name, I'm related to them.
That's awesome. All right, Peter. Here's my last question. Who has had the biggest impact on your leadership style and how you approach your role today?
Yeah. So I would say a a gentleman by the name of Tristan Cromer, who runs his own boutique consulting firm called Chromatic in San Francisco. So probably 10 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer, um, he is the person that really helped me to understand lean startup the way I practice it today. I had been aware of it before. I dabbled in it really. I thought I was using it, but I dabbled in it really. And he really opened my eyes to kind of the way that I apply the toolbox, and therefore some of the things that I needed to communicate well, to educate at the leadership level, so that at the end of the day, it wasn't just this kind of secret thing operating in middle management and lower. It was something that was company-wide, adopted, and embraced. So Tristan's the guy for me.
That was awesome. So now you've made me think I need to reread the book. Like I'm missing something here. There's always more to learn.
Of course.
We've been trying to use the lean startup approach for the last 8 years. And I'd say we were doing a lot of good things with it, but I actually think I'll put that back on my reading list.
Yeah, well, there's some other ones too I can recommend. It's, there's a whole series in that lean series. And then a couple of my colleagues have written books. There's an open source one that Tristan has put together called The Real Startup Book that is amazing. It's got all sorts of different techniques in it, lean startup techniques, and does a really nice job of explaining how to use each technique, what situation you use it in, and then a bunch of case studies.
Yeah.
So, and it's free. You just download it from the Chromatic site.
Nice. All right. We'll have to link to that too. Mm-hmm. This has been great. So I want to give a big thank you to Peter LePiane, founder of IdeaBridge, for being on this episode of The Customer Wins. Go check out Peter's website at ideabridge.group. And don't forget to check out Quick at quickforms.com, where we make processing forms easier. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. We'll click the like button, share this with someone, and subscribe to our channels for future episodes of The Customer Wins. Peter, thanks so much for joining me today.
Reg, this was awesome. Thanks for the questions, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Wins podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.